could have sworn I've muted the mic anyways. And there we are. How are you all doing? How's it going? Hope you're doing well this Friday. Yeah, sorry, I had to delay for a bit because a sudden thing came up for me to do. I had like a quick obligation, so which required me to be a bit awake a bit early than usual, and I just didn't get a lot of sleep because of that, because of how I currently have my schedule and whatnot. So I decided to rest a bit, and yeah, just the rest kind of seeped into the rest of the starting time. So it took me a bit to have everything to set up everything and put everything together, but that's fine, and that's all good so far. So good. To be fair, I'm at very least thankful that I can at least do the stream, because I would have not liked to have canceled this again. And thankfully, you know, I'm mostly and overall-ish recovered. I still have a few stacks here and there. Mostly the voice. It's still at times it gets a bit rough. I think it's mostly just kind of congestion or some sort of like build up that occasionally happens. Or just my voice just kind of gets a bit rough and grovelly, but it's mostly like a morning thing. Although it can still happen even during the day, and especially if I talk, I think too a bit much, or maybe actually more. I think it happens more in scenarios where I just haven't really been talking, and probably I need to kind of keep the yapping. We'll have to see. I don't know. Maybe it's a mix of both. Maybe it's a weird balance that I need to strike. But anyhow, yeah, unfortunately, because there's been some weirdness happening with me the past few days, so I was not able to do a few things that I wanted to do or to announce, but I don't think it's that big of a deal to delay it. So I'm not gonna say any day specifically, just at some point soonish, I'm probably gonna announce something. At this point, I don't want to like just constantly say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna say it next X day or X thing. I'm just gonna say it whenever it's gonna be happening. So I'm just gonna, you know, put that out of the way already. And even, you know, with the still semi-recovering sickness, because I think I think I'm the one that luckily took the shortest end. Actually, not necessarily the shortest end of the straw, more like that I got out of it. I think the best in a way. Like it didn't really hit me that bad. It's just one of those things where it still lingers a bit. And it's not like fully impacting me into doing things. It's just depending on the day or on the moment, I might get a bit here and there. But thankfully, I think today is probably gonna be a bit of a shorter stream. I think it's not gonna be a lot to cover, or in certain parts probably we're just gonna skim through it or keep it as brief as possible. I don't think there is a need for us to get too deep into the details, as you know, we're back to our tabletop shenanigans today, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. And tomorrow it's still gonna be chill overall, just slay the spire. And this time, you know, I want to push myself to at least do these streams. Yeah, today, even though I've had this altercation and quick obligation that, you know, kind of put my schedule a bit off kilter, and I am a bit on the EP side, but not necessarily fully. I think at the very least to the point where I can cover what I want to cover can be done today, so that should be good. And not I'm not like forcing myself, so I'm not like somehow like dragging myself to, you know, do all of this and say all that. But you know, it is what it is. But yeah, kind of as a quick I mean, as a quick warm-up, I don't think I have the energy today, because it's a giant ass rant topic, and I think I've said it here and there for a bit in the social spaces, because, you know, and to some extent I don't want to constantly keep at it, because I think like I want to keep to the positives. I'm still gonna be critical, and I'm still gonna be outspoken about it whenever I see it or something new arises from it, and I just want to say my piece of it. What I'm referring to is the whole shtick that has been recently unveiled. I think since between Wednesday to now, with the with the NVIDIA the LSS 5 thing, the weird AI. I'm still calling it a filter because I have weird suspicions about it myself, but I'm still gonna call it an AI filter, which is absolutely an awful feature. It has no applications and no utility and no efficiency and no reason whatsoever to use it or to have it. Like frame gen and the whole stick with frame generation and the general super scaling and all that, all the previous DLSS forms, those are completely valid, and I've seen use of them. I technically still use them. Those are technologies that have had a purpose and have allowed people with rigs of different setups and odds and ends to have either better performance or better quality out of their games because of it, but still keeping what is actually there, the game created by the creators and creatives and the DLSS 5. Undermines that completely. Is just, as I've kind of described it, is literally penciling over someone else's drawing and be like, here, I made it better for you, and it's just some scribbles put over it, even though that what was before it was the artist's intent and actual intent, theme, concept of it, and you're literally undermining it and taking control over it. And I'm saying you're taking control over it and not them having control over it, because it has been unveiled, even though it has been backtracked all the way back, that no, the developers and the creatives, and they will have control, they will tweak it, they will do all this bells and whistles when it comes to how this what are gonna be these outputs out there and whatnot. It has been revealed that not even the devs have known of this feature prior to the public announcement. They found out about it at the same time. And when you're coming with marketing that you're creating a tool for the developers, and you're not bringing the developers into the conversation prior to announcing it, as part of its development, that's part of how you are going to improve it, how you're going to make it, that should probably make it very clear that that's not who you care for. It's not, you're not making that for them. They're making that for someone else, and most likely a higher power who can just simply say, I no longer agree with whatever view or whatever vision or aesthetic this product has had. We're just gonna shift it to a perspective that we consider to be profitable and reaches a wider audience, and just make this filter or system now be a mandatory thing, or who the fuck knows how this is gonna work. And plus, in its factor, I'm not gonna go back to what I've mainly said, that the semantics of how this has been explained, that it's not Gen AI filter, it's just Gen AI, but a different Gen AI, but still a generative AI, and that's kind of the problem with it. Another thing, it's generative, so the outcome and the result is gonna differ from person to person, game session to game session. There's gonna be no sort of consistency, and there will never be. So even with the whole shtick of, oh yeah, the developers are gonna have control over it, and the artists, the tech artists, the visual artists, and UI designers, and all of that. But the thing is, the output cannot be controlled to that extent. It's always gonna be different from person to person, from product to product, from session to session. So even this supposed control is not full control. So it's bonkers. It's awful in looks. Overall, it just weirdly saturates just the general game, and in most cases you don't need that, because you're all, when it comes to saturation, is a big part when it comes to like setting up the mood of the game or the mood of a scene. This also goes into the idea that hyperrealism should not be something that is achieved, and art direction is a very important factor when it comes to game development, because akin to a movie, akin to a film, you're not just getting a camera and filming surroundings. You have composition, you have visual filters, you have camera filters. And when I say filters, I mean like physical filters on how exactly the color is gonna be transposed onto the lens. Composition, specific sets, and set dressing, and you have different sorts of like color theory work that goes behind it, because it's color and themes and artistic direction also tell a story, also give a message. Something that in most scenarios, a photorealistic, and just you filming around the city will not offer you. Photorealism is just a mixture of mostly the same patterns, the same colors, the same things. Like if you're just gonna add a photorealistic or hyperrealism filter over a game, the game is just gonna mesh, is just gonna start to blend. There's not gonna be distinctions between anything visually, artistically. There's a very proper intent when it comes to things like interactables and all that sort of thing, where you have to make them distinguishable. And adding a hyperrealism filter, you're just making the game be the real life, and people don't want to make real life. Not even movies are filmed in a way that portrays real life. They're still stylized to an extent to be able to distinguish, because things blend. It's just gonna be mushy. It's just gonna be colors of gray. I think I've even seen someone even showing like here's a GTA 4 with completely overflown by this annoying filter, or probably used it for some other like video generation to kind of prove the point. It looked awful. It was nonsensical. It didn't look like a game. It was, first of all, it was uncanny as hell, because you saw game animation, game movement, and general game behavior, but with a very hyper realistic visuals, and it offered this weird uncanny valley to it. And at the same time, everything was just mushy, not in the sense that visually, but artistically speaking. Like it didn't look like anything. It just looked like, okay, I'm looking at a city street, but there's no character to it. There's no theme. There's no nothing. I cannot distinguish individuals. I cannot distinguish people that are important to the story or the scene. Elements of the game to just simple dressing, and that's an important factor to have. So that's, yeah, completely awful. And finally, the whole shtick with, I'm still calling it a filter because I'm calling BS on on how it was described and how it was defined. Because to me, this sounds either unachievable or something that cannot be done by the normal consumer, and to an extent that was kind of proven. This whole thing that, oh yeah, it does generation at a geometry level. It doesn't do it as just a visual overlay that basically applies over the existing mesh and assets and everything. And that kind of makes me think, so you're telling me that in real time you are affecting textures and polygons and models and assets that are pre-made, pre-baked, designed and imported directly within the engine, that are not made to be altered in such a way by the game. You're doing that in real time, adding elements and assets and even visual textures that do not exist in the game's files and game's assets at all. In real time, you do that, because to me that's my understanding of it, that in real time you're modifying assets, you're adding things that into the game that were not existing there before, in a game that needs to have these assets and these variables and information and data uploaded and imported in advance, or as innately into the game engine or into the games itself, to optimally render, to optimally calculate all the variables, all the information that it offers, to then be put efficiently and properly within the game environment. And you're modifying that in real time, just going all wild with it. And you know, we're talking about games that, to an extent, that are AAA games, not some indie games that do not have some high resource demand. That either you're bullshitting, like what you're telling is not actually how the system works, and you're lying to us just to sell an underdeveloped, undercooked, and completely trash product, or what you're saying is true, but it's unachievable under normal technological constraints, or at the very least the ones that the consumer have, of no single GPU or no single unit machine PC will be able to do that and also do the game things at the same time. And it's technically, that point has been proven, as you know, the showcase has had the whole shtick with, oh yeah, the game, this entire showcase has been done by with a combination of two RTX 5090s. So basically it required a 5090 for the game itself and a 5090 specifically for the DLSS 5 feature. So it needed two separate high performing pieces of hardware that are really expensive to do whatever that was. And I still don't believe it to the extent that it's described. That's what that hardware can achieve that. I still believe that that's mostly just a visual overlay that has been sold a bit to a higher degree, because to me it still feels a bit bonkers. It still feels like you're bullshitting me in how exactly this works behind the scenes, and you are not even you yourself don't know what exactly the fuck you're talking about. And that's not something that's not consumer friendly. You're telling us, oh yeah, if you want to achieve this quote unquote new technological innovation and want to have access to this new innovation and new tech, just have two 5090s. Yeah, something that the general gamer hobbyist has access to. Sure, clearly 100% consumer friendly, considering that these entire endeavors have risen the prices of GPUs, risen the prices of RAM, risen the price of memories, and from my understanding, even those are even continuously on the rise, and many things. Something that in the past it was also a hobby. PC building itself was also a hobbyist endeavor. It's unachievable to do these days because of how expensive everything has become, because of these unnecessary and unrequired, both by the industry and by the consumers in majority, of features that nobody asked for, that are inefficient, undermine human creativity, are immoral, damage the environment, and so many other things. Or what? Just for this weird, obvious circle jerk of big companies and CEOs to basically make money off each other and profit between each other and all that BS. That's basically it, but not for us, the normal day-to-day individual. Yeah, I've despised that fully and truly, and it really angered me, because this has reached the point of, this is no longer about creative. This is about full on about control. Because at this point, it's completely evident. All of this is about control. All of this is about they have people with the power and the money and the influence to be able to decide whatever the fuck they want out of whatever product, and having systems built in to undermine the developer's decision and developer's choices, even if by just simply going around the aspect of needing people with skill set to do whatever crazy thing you're demanding. That's basically it, and I completely hate that, and I think it's making the industry, it is making the industry worse. And there have been constant complaints, and to no extent I think there has been a push or some sort of movement or some sort of a shift by bigger entities that should probably be representative of the gaming industry as a whole, or just even general groups or wider groups, aside from just smaller niche groups or interconnected groups, to speak out or have a say about this. At the same time, it is complicated. I'm not saying it's a simple matter, but it just makes this industry and hobby and passion even worse. Worse than it has been just simply because of the layoffs. now it's just I'm not sure when exactly it's gonna get better. And I try to stay positive. I try to look at the things that I enjoyed and the things that I want to showcase in a positive light, and that's kind of the whole shtick. One of the other things of showing indie games, showing other products, showing the diamonds in the rough, amidst this entire, these towering spires of AAA productions of varying quality, from a few good, multiple mediocre, and quite a lot bad. We should no longer look at the top of those peaks and just lower our gaze at more sensible levels of height and just find something better out of it. Because you'll never know. You'll find some games that are way more fun, or at the very least be way more selective when it comes to these kind of things. Yeah, I try to stick on the positive when it comes to what I'm showcasing and what I try to put in the light out there. Of course, aside from my own occasional personal enjoyments and personal things that I want to check out, and just, everyone has a guilty pleasure or something of that sort. I'm not necessarily undermining that. And yeah, man, these past few days, seeing those news just keep coming up and piling up have been something. Oh, I completely hated it. And also to an extent, I am thankful that I'm still under the, because I 100% know in my heart of hearts that whatever this feature is gonna be is not gonna be accessible to some of the older generations, the older gens. So, and I know for a fact with my 30 series, I don't think I'll have to worry about this becoming a thing that I'll have to avoid and make sure that it's not gonna be a thing in my games happening, because I'm 100% sure that my graphics card will not be able to achieve whatever this BS thing is gonna be is wanting to achieve. And in the future, whenever I'm gonna acquire a new hardware and new components, I guess I'll just not really look too much into Nvidia anymore. To be fair, to an extent, Nvidia has been overpriced, and certain features I'm not necessarily looking into too much into it or wanting them too much. Like ray tracing don't get me wrong, ray tracing has been a great feature when it comes to visuals, and to some extent in some places Nvidia has innovated in adding a lot more to the general visual experience, surely, but this is definitely not one of it, the DLSS 5, I think. But at the same time, it's just a nice thing to have. I've never seen it as oh, this is the next thing for gaming. This is the next big thing that every game should now be utilizing as a mainstay or main feature. No, again, it's all about the style, aesthetics, art style, and art direction that you want to follow. And in some cases, ray tracing is overkill or not gonna convey the visuals that you want in the way that you want. So why use it? It's a good tool to have for certain directions and visual styles, sure, but not for everything. So that I would not consider that an innovation that changes the entire industry, or that it should be must have for the entire industry. So because of that, I'm willing to not have it as to its best capabilities and just stick to companies that probably do better. So yeah, to be fair, I've to some extent I've kind of considered that anyways, that I kind of wanted to shift towards AMD hardware in the future as well, including with GPUs as well, and CPUs, not just GPUs. Just going full AMD next time around. And who knows, we'll see how that's gonna turn out. And not anytime soon, that's for sure. In a few maybe years from now, I would maybe want to actually have a better setup, and one of those things for the better setup would be having a better system and maybe turning my current PC as a stream machine and having something a bit more dedicated that is higher performing. Because as a stream machine, this can definitely do its thing. I don't necessarily have to worry about it. And pushing it just to do the necessary requirements and whatnot, and have a more higher performing system to do cooler things future. But that's again, a future thing, not a now thing. Anyways, rant aside, that's all that I kind of, in the end, at the end of it, I guess I still got into the rant. So whatever, it's just my take on it, and I think the take of most people, and the I think it's overall the majority of the gaming community is just saying, nah, fuck that, not wanting it, not looking forward to it, not interested in it, so leave us alone. We don't care how much you believe that we are wrong. It's still our choice as a consumer to be like, we don't want it, so we're not gonna get it. We're not gonna ask you to ask for it. So good luck having a pile of whatever that is in your storages, because to be fair, these days, who the fuck is gonna buy a high-end GPU? I'm saying especially, like, you know, the day-to-day person, a high-end GPU that would be able to run this kind of stuff. You know, good luck, I suppose, to Nvidia for trying to stay afloat from this point on, because I feel like we're getting to a point, yeah, right now, yeah, because of the whole AI boom. Nvidia's probably well into profits and not necessarily gonna care about some drop in the market that is just the general consumer not paying or not buying graphics cards. But at the same time, there's probably gonna be a point where that shift is gonna impact them negatively hard. So, you know, we'll have to see how that's gonna turn out. But anyhow, let's stop with all that doom and gloom. Let's talk about fun things. Let's talk about things that are more interesting or more fun or more enjoyable to have around, as we are having a tabletop RPG stream today. And to kind of quickly summarize the intro and shenanigans and whatnot, because now we're getting into the meat of it. These streams specifically, but you know, it can also happen at any stream, because I don't necessarily have to be exclusive with this kind of conversations. But in these streams specifically, I'm not here to talk about tabletop RPGs. I want this to be a space where people can talk about this hobby, be excited about it, tell you know, be open about talking about the cool things they're doing, maybe asking for advice or asking for help here and there if they require, if they need some guidance, be it as a player, a game master, or anything else of the sorts. And hoping that either from within the chat, fostering this mentality and this community of helping each other out and finding people that can help each other out, I can also offer my own perspective, my own advice. I've been in the hobby space since 2018 ish, so a few years from now. Started with D&D like majority of people, but I've diversified into more systems in recent years. Got into some old World of Darkness IP, specifically some Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary and Hunter the Reckoning First Edition, aka the Imbued Hunters. Some Gestalt RPG, some Pathfinder 2nd Edition remastered stuff. A few little like one-shot systems here and there. D&D, I'm still like open to it. It's just something that in most scenarios I'll just play or just be interested in as something to kind of like participate in, but I'm not sure how much I myself am gonna be heavily involved into that space. Probably I'm still gonna create things like homebrew and content akin to that, just because I'm still familiar with that system, and if I'm gonna do it for something else that is similar to D&D, why not also adapt it to D&D as well? It's within my capabilities. I don't hate the current state of D&D to the extent of me saying that I don't want to play it. I'm still gladly enjoy it and gladly play it and gladly have fun with it. I have my gripes with it. I have my own I've had my own expectations with what is now known as the 5.5 edition officially, which is kind of funny that it finally kind of gave in to this to this naming convention. I've had those expectations which have not really been fulfilled, and they didn't really like the direction they kind of generally went with some of the design concepts and design ideas, and overall I just still prefer the 2014 edition of D&D more than what is the 2024 one. But to some extent I'll probably look into both of them and offer variants that maybe are more flexible or more akin to tradition. But anyways, so yeah, those, I don't think I've missed any other game system that I've played the release. But when it comes to game systems that I've also have a looked at, I've looked at the Lancer, the RPG. I've also looked at Gestalt more in depth as well, which is kind of like a mix between, it's kind of a mix between D&D 5th edition and Pathfinder. Like, it's a bit more complex than D&D, but simpler, more refined than Pathfinder. It doesn't have the same granularity that Pathfinder has when it comes to customization and mechanical depth. So, but it's a nice in between of the two. What other games? Oh yeah, back when it was still in open playtest, I looked at the Daggerheart system, and I would love to have a look at it in its full like released version as well at some point in the future. Just currently don't own it, but definitely something that I would like to check out. Another thing, what else? Because I'm losing track. So, oh yeah, the Bunkers and Badasses, the D&D-esque Borderlands inspired system as well. That is technically the in-universe D&D equivalent of it. And some quick looks and other game systems as well from mostly just starter guides that are freely available from like certain horror media like Candle Obscura, Mothership RPG, Call of Cthulhu, what else? Call of Divinity Lost. Looked a bit at GURPS as well, and some other systems that we checked, Mithras and TactiQuest as being the first diceless or near diceless system that we looked at recently, and actually even the review for it has been made public recently, actually, from my shorts, because I still have a bit of a backlog of the RPG things and RPG shorts, and just recently it caught up to my coverage of TactiQuest fully. And you know, I ended that with my final thoughts and opinions of TactiQuest. I have it on my socials and all that. Also, you can also see it on Blue Sky. I think on the Twitter is also linked towards the YouTube channel and the TikTok as well, and of course those two as well, directly uploaded there, so you can check it out. It was a fun system, cool to look at it, and I've been glad to have the opportunity to have a look at something that I was not yet fully released. It was still in the works, and a few elements and a few mechanics and a few systems that were yet to be released to the wider public. So I appreciate that of Jan of offering me the opportunity. And yeah, I think mostly that's kind of it. But yeah, I've diversified quite a lot more, and I'm open to, and I want to diversify even more than that, and I want to look into more systems. And that's kind of the point of these streams, to check out other systems, to get ideas of how other games are played and how other games are structured, and in what ways we can think of TTRPGs differently to what is probably the mainstream traditional ones that most people know of, which, you know, is anything D&D and D&D adjacent. I would say World of Darkness has its very big significant fan base as well. That is, when it comes to the tabletop RPG space, yes, it didn't have the same kind of breakthrough as D&D had because of some very popular actual plays and anything of that sort, but still really good. A really significant niche of it as well. And I'm sure there's some other ones that I'm currently missing as well, but definitely, you know, D&D with a pillar that is a bit more on the mechanical action economy combat side, with, you know, and Vampire the Masquerades and anything World of Darkness more on the role-playing side. I'm not sure if there's like Call of Cthulhu, I think is one of the ones most well known, so I'm guessing that one, when it comes to like exploration and investigation, well, it's mostly an investigation system. So yeah, those things. But yeah, that's the general shtick of it all when it comes to these streams. So yeah, feel free to chat about these kind of things, and also don't shy about, you know, derailing a bit from the topic and asking about something different that is ttrpg related, just because I am talking about a specific game and a specific subject. It's simply so also for us to have something to talk about and something for me to cover and have here to chat on, and not just be sitting here in the void, waiting for a conversation that may not be here. Because at the same time, I want these streams to be lurker friendly as well. So if you're just here to vibe and hear me yap or hear me read tabletop things, and just do your own thing, or be it work or gaming or whatever else you're doing out there with me in the background, go ahead and do it. There's no required interaction needed, but if you want to do that, don't shy away from feeling that you're gonna derail the subject. You can fully talk about it, and to the best of my abilities, I'm gonna give my own perspectives. If I'm not familiar to the system or the game, or I'm not too knowledgeable in it, I can still offer to an extent my perspective on it without much issue, in a more journalistic sense. And then from that point, you take that piece of advice and apply it to the existing rules and all of that. But yeah, so yeah, that kind of covers the general intro and all that. We are going to get into beamsaber, but I think just because I want to run into it fully and have all of it covered completely, and basically just get immediately into the meat of it and not be interrupted by anything else, I think I'm gonna do an earlier ad break. So I'm gonna start it now, and when I return, we directly get into the beamsaber, have a quick intro of what beamsaber is about, and get into the meat and topics of today and the chapters that I want to read of today. So yeah, I'm gonna take a break now, and I will return in a few minutes. Okay, there we are. Sorry about this. It took a bit longer than I expected, because I also have to do a thing really quick, which is why I also took the break a bit early, not just to fully start into the topic. So yeah, sorry about that. It was a really lengthy break, but we should be good now. Plus, I was also discussing some schedule things that just popped up right before I jumped back. It'll be like that sometimes. So yeah, okay, so we are looking ourselves at beamsaber now, and I don't think there's anything for me to cover or mention. I think I've talked about anything else in the meantime. So yeah, let's get out of the way with that. So beamsaber is a forge in the dark game system, basically based around the Blades in the Dark system, which is overall a more, I think the best way to kind of define it, overall a system where all the mechanics, all the concept of rolling dice is streamlined and basically kind of synthesize. I still pronounce it kind of messed up, but to the aspect of telling a story and to pushing the narrative forward. Every mechanic, every action you make, and every decision and mode of play that you take is there to kind of move the story forward, be it in the way you want it, or in case the dice do not go completely in your favor, in a different way, but still moving it forward. You're not hit by any sort of hard wall. So even in scenarios where you've not necessarily met the dice rolls that you were required to hit, the narrative might still progress in a way that is towards your goal, but with either way more obstacles ahead of you, or something has changed within the scenario that now is not where you might have to reconsider what exactly you want out of that scene. But the entire purpose of it is all of it goes towards telling a story, telling aspects about your character, your vehicle, aka the mech, the world around it, and how that responds to you, and how which also includes the general environment, NPCs, with a heavy emphasis, because this is a mecha inspired system. Takes a lot of elements and tropes of how the mech is an extension of yourself, the concept, the rivalries are a big factor here. You have a system of rivals. Squatting as well is also has a significant role and a significant purpose, and the balance of relations between factions to a small degree of just simply the balance of between you and your groups towards other groups of pilots, to even wider, larger, grander factions that have a bigger say and bigger play into the general war itself. But at the same time, it goes quite heavy into the theme of you are just a soldier, you are just there in the trenches, in the midst of it all, and all you're trying to do is basically get out of there intact in one way or another, or at the very least alive, or trying to survive it, with a big emphasis that you might make shifts, you might make a change, but all those changes are more personal and local to you. In no way does the machinations of war are too grand for you to actually shift the outcome of the war. So you're out there for both you and those fellow few that you have decided to squad with, to just basically make it through this experience and get out of it as intact as possible, and in the midst of it telling a fun, interesting, and a compelling, not necessarily compelling, but a fun and interesting story that has its own with its own twists and turns and moments of with equal heartfelt, heroic, and fired up, and I'm pretty sure, because at the end of the day it's a tabletop RPG, humorous moments, and all the systems here are built in such a way to offer you those opportunities, and all elements of storytelling have a say into the play. If your mech has certain little, what are called here, quirks and weird ways of how it functions, those take a big play into how that's gonna roll out within the game session and within the scenes. Equally, that also applies to your character. Some elements of that can also be not necessarily to the squad, but exactly how you balance the relationships and reputations, because it kind of, the whole thing with the relationship system is kind of what you see as a rep system within like RPGs or MMOs. It's quite akin to that, which, to be fair, it makes sense, because at the end of the day, MMOs are basically the first ever MMOs, or the first MMOs out there, were designed under the foundations of tabletop RPGs. It's quite obvious about that. But also having a coffee to kind of keep myself energized while I'm talking. Yeah, that's the general gist of it. Of course, I'm probably not the best summary. It's been a bit because, you know, it's been like 2 weeks since I've last talked about it. I've been a bit all over the place, and even today my brain is a bit scattered, so I might have not offered the best definition of the system, but I'm pretty sure if you're familiar with with anything that is Blades in the Dark related, or a Forge in the Dark system, you might have already a grasp and understanding of it all here. The general defining factor that I really like about Beamsaber, maybe compared to some other mecha RPGs that we looked in the past, specifically Lancer, is, aside from being a very heavy story and role-playing forward sort of system, I like the granularity, and I like the depth that you have, and the significance that both you have equally as a pilot, an individual, as an actual, as an individual, then as an actual pilot controlling a mech and piloting and utilizing that mech, and also as an entire unit, and that is also has a big play. And I like that and to the point where you have your own perks and abilities, and as a squad you're working towards improving your general basically your general facilities, your accommodations, your equipment and gear and opportunities. So there's also this element of cooperations built into the system, and when you're creating your squad, you will have to cooperate with the rest of your players into defining what kind of squad you are, what exactly you want out of your squad, both when it comes to equipment, perks, what exactly are the themes, and that you want to follow, and what sort of goals you are striving towards. So it's not just personal goals, you have also squad goals, of course, the whole balance of generally the goals of whatever factions you decide to kind of lean towards or generally serve. Although to an extent you're not necessarily a mercenary, you can also work as a mercenary, but that has its small downsides. It's definitely way harder. Basically, the biggest problem with it is you're not going to have as an ease of access to resources as if you were to be under a certain big faction, like a corporate faction, a theology faction, some sort of like a military faction, or anything else of the sorts. Being fully independent will mean that your access to resources and basically for ways to improve your facilities and probably even repair equipment has to be acquired in other ways, which most likely will find methods of how that can be done outside of missions, through the post-mission activities chapter that we'll have to look through, because up until now we've looked at all the elements of customization and creation that on the player side that is available. We've looked at the general and at the general introduction and basics of the game system. We looked at pilot creation, we looked at vehicle creation as well, and also at squad creation and elements of mission progression as part of as a whole unit. And all that has been left to now is a section that I skipped, which is player principles and fiction first gaming, which talks about the general rules of engagement and philosophy of play that Beamsaber has. And lastly, we also have the downtime activities, which is basically activities that you do post mission, be it to prepare for the next missions. Maybe you have some other projects that you want to work towards, either for your squad or headquarters, maybe for yourself, maybe for your vehicle. And I'm suspecting that there are some activities out there that also allow you to obtain certain resources to an extent, in case you are requiring more than what your mission has offered you by the time you start your next mission. And after that, there's all that's left is the Game Master section, which I'm probably going to segment into two components because it's a bit lengthy, and that's also going to be the point where we're going to end the coverage, because the general world building and storyline of or general world building of Beamsaber, that's something for you to look at. That's something for you to look into it. I'm also here to encourage you to check the system yourself, to acquire the PDF yourself, and to offer support to one extent or another, or maybe find groups out there or people out there that also play the game and they could offer you a copy of the PDF as well, because sharing is also completely fine. But you know, I'm not here to show all the ins and outs, and even when I'm covering game system chapters, I look at the broader systems and not so much as on the granular choices and elements of customizations, or even in the aspects of granular actions that you are capable of doing. I'm just looking at the general way of play and how exactly the system works as a whole. At most, at best, I'm just looking at one part of it or one example from within that entire list, just so you can get an idea of how that is structured and how that looks. But from after that, we don't look at anything else. For example, when you looked at the pilot playbook, we look at the ace, but anything else has been skipped. So if you want to look at details about the bureaucrat, empath, envoy, and so on, that's something for you to look up yourself. And also I'm not here to showcase everything completely for free, because the creators also need to survive to some extent or another. That's completely valid. And to some extent, I know certain products out there even basically kind of warn you of how much you should show and cover within any sort of like within any sort of like coverage media, like upstream or other forms of content creation like videos and whatnot. Anyways, that's enough of the general yapping and introduction. Let's get to the topic that we are planning today. And first, I'm going to start with the chapter of player principles and fiction first gaming, as those describe elements of play and how exactly the game is is intended to be approached as a whole, both by the players and the game master. And then we are going to look at some downtime activities as what else can be done post outside of the general structure, because downtime activities don't necessarily have to be always done, from my understanding, but it's a good thing to have in mind. It's a good thing to know. I still believe that it's a part of the general cycle. So I feel like, after reading the general principles of how the game should play, let's also look at some other elements of play as well. And then what's left to be covered another time. So yeah, these chapters are not too lengthy from the looks of it. So we have like 10 pages at least here, and another 10-ish here. So 20-ish pages overall. I think it's usually what we've covered in the past. So I'm not expecting there to be a ton to cover today. So now let me just zoom in, as we're looking at the first chapter of not first but fourth chapter, the players principle, the player principles. I said that, yeah, players principles. I said that correctly. For a second, I second guessed myself. I was like, wait, was it players principles or something else? And technically it was also written here. But yeah, so you just read a lot of the rules that explain the mechanics of being a pilot. This section provides you principles that guide you, the players, into how to use these rules. If you follow these principles, you're gonna get the most out of being a beamsaber pilot. So, firstly, protect your comrades. The subject matter of beamsaber can be dark and heavy at times. The themes surrounding war and the relationship that develops because of them are very intense. Even the most light-hearted, cut-loose scenes can stumble into or around troubles from the last mission. Feeling strong emotions in play can be enjoyable, just look at horror movies, but it isn't always clear when they become harmful. So everyone at the table is responsible of making sure that these themes don't harm the players, including the game master. So keep an eye on the group's lines and veils, which are going to be mentioned here, which is a safety tool utilized by ttrpgs to make sure that certain topics are not approached, or if they are approached, they are not to a careful amount of details. And then you take a moment to ask if everyone is okay when you think one of them has been breached, or you suspect that a player may be uncomfortable. If something harms or upsets the player, the table has many options. Use any combination to these to protect yourself and each other. First, cut out the harmful detail by saying that it never happened. It's fine to retcon if it is for the general enjoyment of everyone present. Even if it's upsetting one person, you're there for everyone to have a good time. And that's the main focus, having a good time. So prioritize that over just whatever continuity BS that you're thinking of. Drop the subject and talk about something else. So let that simmer, and if need be, address it later on. Pause and discuss what just happened, provided everyone is okay to talking about it. No one is obligated to talk about their feelings or well-being. That, everybody is should feel comfortable of opening up, so nobody should be forced. But clear. Quietly skip ahead if everyone is comfortable with the event happening, but not with depicting it. That's also like another idea. That's part of the lines and veils. Some people are okay with the topic being mentioned, but not necessarily being described, because usually those elements of description can cause some sort of discomfort or trauma, depending on what exactly it's causing. But just having it mentioned in passing or is okay, like, or something like a phobia, for example, arachnophobia. Maybe you can mention that spiders in passing, but don't necessarily go into descriptions, or don't necessarily have something vividly visualized or detailed about spiders within the game session. But you can probably just say quickly in passing, like, yeah, there's some spiders, moving on. And lastly, end the session and ask if people would like to debrief about what happened. Everyone's well-being is more important than the game. Yeah, make sure that nobody's out there having a bad time and suffering. Because I've had times myself where, and I've made the mistake of instead of going along or moving the game forward, I probably should have put my foot down and stopped. And I'm not saying this in for doing this for someone else. I'm saying this in the perspective of I should have done that for myself specifically, because I've been in a situation where a line was crossed that I was not comfortable with. It should have, and I should have, as the game master, because I was the game master there, I should have taken the authority and be like, yo, stop. Either we move on from this, let's not continue it like this. I'm not okay with how this plot is moving forward, or we're stopping here and rethinking how this is gonna go next time around. I'm not gonna go into details. It was a topic and subject I was not fully comfortable with. I wasn't necessarily traumatized or anything like that, but it was a topic that it should have not been happening, and I didn't like how it kind of shifted towards. And I've had to an extent, I still had the discussion, I've still had the talk kind of after the fact, and after that session of, you know, because there were some discussions in justification of why the events happened the way they happened, and you know, I followed that logic because I'm a bit petty like that, and I was like, okay, if you want to go into this rabbit hole, make sure that you're not arguing that with me, because I can give you enough justifications to kind of give you the insight and knowledge that you would have also had enough to go with to not follow that plan, to not follow that line of thought and reasoning. You would have had equal amounts, if not even more, of just being like, offer things that offered you that you should have not necessarily acted that way. And also it also had some weird underlining, you know, mentality of it that was not necessarily okay. But yeah, I was very clear that no, this is not okay, stop there. So don't ever come back again and argue this with me, because it's not gonna be you're not gonna win this argument, or at the very least you're never gonna make me agree with this line of thinking. So then, embrace the pilot's life. A pilot's life is not easy. In the best circumstances, they are given difficult tasks with insufficient support, and affect lives they don't know with every mission. Even when things go well, they are rewarded with more challenges and not enough supplies. And now they have the ire of those they've wronged in the course of duty. Their quirks will run out, their stress will build up, entanglements will provide unpleasant surprises, regardless of the pilot's competence. The war is widely unfair. So that is a general factor that sometimes it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes events happen just because of happening, the pure forces of entropy, or because of outcomes beyond you. Of course, you can dial it back if you feel like that's a bit too close to, I don't know, real life circumstances, let's call it, that where, you know, a ton of the bad things are happening not because of your own doing, but because of the outcomes and the consequences of other people higher up in the world making decisions instead, and somehow kind of, you know, trickling down and affecting you. Not gonna go too deep into it. Pretty sure if you look at any corner of whatever the fuck is happening in this world right now, you probably can find a parallel. So yeah, then we will watch as terrible things happen to them, their loved ones, and their plans. In doing so, we must remember that they are not us. We can and should be emotionally invested in what happens to them, because they are admirable for their efforts, no matter how doomed. But their failures do not reflect on the players. It's fine if they falter, fail, and fall, because the mechanics ensure that those moments are temporary, unless we as players want them to be permanent. Besides, they might succeed. Wouldn't it be glorious to witness that moment? Yeah, it also kind of goes into the idea of building up kind of the underdog story. Like, you know, everything, the world and everything else around them is against them. They are facing impossible odds, and it's really rough for them. But wouldn't it be interesting? Would it be a really fun story to see them pushing through all of that, and somehow, in some way, by the end of it, succeeding? And as it was mentioned here, if failure is what you want out of your character story, you can also have failure if you want that to be some sort of like cautionary tale, or want your character to have some sort of theme or concept or idea to kind of like show out there of what this kind of individual is and what exactly they brought onto themselves, either by their own making or fruits, or by following a path that was not favorable. And again, as I mentioned here, if you want to have that story of failure, it's otherwise still push through it. And I feel like this is also a good, again, it goes back into solving of how tabletop RPGs are also a good medium to, in some way, to kind of exercise thought experiments and ways to kind of like how to even approach your day-to-day life in a safe environment. So this whole idea of just basically showing that with resilience, with perseverance and endurance, you can achieve great things, even if things out there look bleak and look and life seems to be seems to kind of go against you in a way. As long as you keep at it, keep pushing forward, something somewhere, there's gonna be a moment where we're gonna find, it could be something simple as just a simple life from the bleakness that you had before. It could be something grander and more elaborate, or whatever else in between. But this idea that there's gonna be a moment where something's gonna come out, something's gonna be out, you're gonna encounter something, you're gonna stumble upon, or you're gonna find that point in time, that moment where everything kind of clicks together and you realize, wait, I can do this. I can make my situation better. At the very least, better, if not good, or like fully good. So I should try to push towards it, and you know, then translate those kind of mentality and that kind of thought also in real life. Because everyone out there is struggling. Nobody is, you know, at the least when I'm talking about the day-to-day person, everyone out there is struggling in their own way. Sometimes learning from these games and realizing that just, you know, letting the struggles take a hold of us should not be the choice. Should not be how to do things or how to handle this. Then, go into danger. Fall in love with trouble. You will never be completely safe, so be bold. You're a pilot surrounded by massive machines, some of which are trying to kill you, in a war that predates your birth and won't conclude in your lifetime. It'll take big plans and big actions to fulfill the big dream of a happy ending. Embrace risky ideas. Go for what sounds fun, exciting, and probably dangerous. The rules support your risky or seemingly impossible goals, so dare to be interesting and don't fear the peril. Avoiding every little danger won't build up the pilot's stress, but it sure will stress out the player. So yeah, trying to balance out this whole idea, like, I don't want to struggle. I don't want to face hardships. I want my character to survive. The system out there has many things built into it to make sure that even in the bleak worst of situations, you're still gonna be out there as a player. And even if you burn in a blaze of glory, at the very least you do so in a blaze of glory, and you have something to show and something to tell to people later on. Plus, the game itself really kind of tells you that you're not always gonna be able to balance these things out, or somehow be in the middle ground. Literally, how the relationship system and trust system work. It's basically designed in such a way that at any point, as long as you're doing a mission for someone else, someone else is gonna hate you because of it, and your relationship with them is gonna falter. And depending on how bad that's gonna falter, that's gonna bring consequences to you. So there's no way for you to play the middleman, or just to be there in the neutral zone. And that kind of, and even if you want to do that kind of shit, that shit is fucking tiring and stressing. Not in a fun way, kind of, you know, pressure. It's just stressing for in a kind of a annoying sort of way, because you're just trying out there to minimize the risk and you know, minimize this kind of insane moments just for what? Because the game is not gonna reward you necessarily for like, oh yeah, I'm in good standing, or I'm at the least in neutral standing with everyone here. Yay, EP me. That's not really gonna give you anything. Technically, it's better to be to have some people that regard you highly, so you have access to better resources, even if that means that multiple people, if not, then maybe then multiple people are gonna be your enemy, then necessarily you are gonna have allies or factions. At the least, you know, you have people out there who are backing you up and offering you significant support, and not just, and in some sense, and basically, and not only support, but access to cool things. Like if you want to achieve cool stuff, you have to do risky things, you know, high risk, high reward sort of mentality. Yeah, consequences aren't failures. A result of 4 to 6 means that you succeed, but at what you are trying to do, there will likely be unintended consequences, but you will have succeeded nonetheless. Yeah, when consequences do befall upon you, don't hate them. Exciting things happen when they appear. Someone gets harmed, a vehicle takes damage, new challenges arrive, and much more. All of these outcomes will create opportunities for taking actions to achieve your dreams. Telling stories about gripping moments is why you're playing the game. Don't back away from them. Yeah. Interesting things happen through conflict at the end of the day, especially when it comes to games. And conflict doesn't necessarily have to be conflict in a combat sort of sense. It could be conflict in a social sense. It can be a conflict in a way of, it's a challenge, you know, that you're trying to solve and deal with, that might have some sort of big risk behind it. But yeah, to have fun time when you are playing a video game. You're basically, in most scenarios, you're doing the same thing. If we're talking about like some high action sort of games, you're taking risks. And if you were to like put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist, that protagonist is doing like bonkers things to achieve whatever they are achieving, and that makes the story more interesting. That makes the story more fun at the end of the day. So do it. Embrace the chaos. Make it part of your experience. Make it part of your play and part of your character. Then, you use actions honorably. Players choose the actions they use to overcome obstacles, but that comes with the duty of being honest in your choices. Choose actions that best suit what you are doing, not just the actions with the highest action rating. If you are demolishing a building with your vehicle, be honest and roll destroy. And don't claim you can use manipulate or scan because you're targeting the main support columns. Of course, you might use a scan for a setup actions by identifying the load-bearing structures, so another pilot can destroy them with increased effect or improved position. Yeah, basically, be honest about it. Like, don't try to out logic your way, or try to kind of, I guess, lawyer your way, or kind of like interpret your way into what the game is giving out there as actions. If you're trying to justify the purpose of it because you feel like that's not something because you want to do this thing, but at the same time feel like it's within your character, maybe take a better look at your character and realize that either one, you should not do this action because yes, it's not into your character. So why would your character do that? Give your character some inner conflict and justification of, or reason to do something else, or look within their perspective and find something different that fits them. Or if that's something that you really want, maybe rethink how that character is actually doing, or maybe add a new layer that leans into this maybe inner conflict, or maybe embracing of this side of the character that maybe the war and the missions have kind of surfaced out of him. That's also a way to tell a story, but at the end of the day, at the least, be truthful about it. either do something that is akin to your character, or if you want to do something that feels a bit out of character, figure out a reason why exactly is that now part of a character, or create that conflict. Because at the end of the day, it's fun to also have that inner conflict as well. This dwelling. Oh, you're also, there to take responsibility. Everyone playing is responsible for the game's narrative. This includes tone, themes, descriptions, and much more. So you're participating there in both a tactical role and, just as importantly, an expressive one. Let your pilot embody what you want to see in game. So if you want the war to be deadly, take serious harm when it's offered. If you want political complexity, seek out and implement schemes of your own. If you want emotional flawed characters, lean into that with your own. Be the story that you want to see. So yeah, if you want to tell a specific type of story, first tell it through ways that you can control it, that being your character, your vehicle, maybe even elements of how your squad is developed, and through that element of cooperation with your team, and figure out how exactly that squad is gonna make. But yeah, lead by example. If you want people to be more descriptive, to be more to offer a lot of narrative in their play, start with yourself, and then encourage and be accommodating to people trying it out themselves, and not be too judgmental or too critical. At the very least, let them be comfortable in doing so. But again, start with your own actions first, because you have control of your character. So if you want to have these elements of the story, tell it through parts of the story that they can come up. Incorporate elements of your character, or elements of backstory, elements into your character's backstory or character's concept that fit those themes. Make your character act in such a way that fulfills that theme. And even the way you are, maybe even in a way the way you are interacting with your players, find a fun, approachable, and not at all like combative way, because that's also like another thing. Don't roleplay in a way that it feels combative, or it feels that you're there to kind of be against the players. But find a way to also roleplay with your players that also kind of conveys that idea. Start with what you can do, and then things will start to fall in line by other people. Other people might lean into that, might follow by example, might, at the very least, through you as a catalyst of it all. At the very least, you could be the center of some of these themes, and the characters will have, I don't know, elements of drama that maybe you're looking for, simply because they're interacting with the drama of your character that you're bringing out through your character. And at the very least, when your character and that individual are together within a scene, those elements are going to be there for them as well, and not just for you. After that, you use your stress and quirks. Your pilot stress and vehicle quirks are resources that help you overcome the challenges in your way. By pushing yourself and getting an assist from a squad mate, you can get at least 2 dice in any action. If you don't get a 6, you can negate any consequences with a resist roll. If you don't spend your resources, the challenges may seem unsurmountable. But yeah, utilize the tools that are given to you. Even again, risk reward. Even if it feels like you're pushing yourself to a bad outcome, you're also gaining something out of it. That they are kind of designed in such a way of, you're never putting yourself in a bad situation, but at the same time not earning something out of it. So use them to the best, to your best capabilities, and to watch the scene and narratives best fit. Then advocate for scenes you want. During a session, talk with everyone at the table about what scenes you want to see. Sometimes interesting story beats will happen as things fall into place, but advocating for scenes that interest you is far more reliable way to your story together. So talk to the game master about setting up scenes with NPCs. Talk to the other players about how your pilots might work together or fall apart. Talk to the whole group about creating missions that follow the stories you want to pursue. Remember to return the favor. So yeah, collaborative storytelling. If you want something to happen into the game, talk to the rest of the people involved in said game and find ways to have these elements be present. And to some extent, those players can also probably offer their own insight and offer their own perspectives, or at the very least add something additional to it that can enhance the experience. And it's more fun when you have other people involved in it, and it's not just you trying to kind of tell your monologue, the story or the scene that you want on your own, while everyone else follows a different narrative. That's also like another thing, communication. Don't just expect that people are just gonna fall in line just because you push things in that idea. See where everyone is standing, and you know, have a talk about it. First of all, have a talk about it. See where exactly these elements can be put together, and then create something as a whole, as a unit, as maybe a group, maybe as a collaborative thing with a few players, and put those elements into play. Then don't talk yourself out of fun. Whether you're planning the mission or just deciding what to do next, do what sounds like fun. Your pilot might stress about executing the best plan, but you as a player are here to have fun, whatever the consequences. You are playing this game to experience the dramatic confrontations between the pilots in the war. So embody those moments, hold steady, and engage. Again, yeah, follow the nature of the system. Same idea. Build your character for play. When you start your pilot's first mission, there'll be a handful of details, a history, a tragedy, opening, several beliefs about other pilots. Those details say who the pilot was, not who they are or who they will become. You'll reveal who they are through play, based on the choices you make, the orders you follow, who you leave behind, and when you rebel. Let your pilot surprise you over the course of the game. Maybe your pilot isn't who they thought they were, or who you thought they were. I think this is something that happens every time, and at least I've always encountered it. Of creating a character, creating a concept, and as the narrative unfolds, as the game unfolds, and as I'm taking play and making decision and thinking on how this character kind of moves through the story, I find new ideas, I find new elements, I find new nuances that I can add on to them through what I'm encountering within the play, and how does that shift them. To some extent, I sometimes can feel and have this thought of them leaning back to what I wanted them to be, or what I thought they were, or they were initially expected to become. But at the same time, I'm kind of also leaning within. But why wouldn't they do this now? Why wouldn't they lean into this direction, into this sort of narrative, into this type of character in the individual? Because at the end of the day, they've dealt with X, Y, Z, so they would probably no longer believe, think, or behave, or act, or decide in the same way they would have decided before. The pieces have changed, so that means that also the strategy has changed for that, how that character is thinking. So why wouldn't you lean? Because a good example I think I've had with Damien. To some extent, I've still considered Damien as being, once he got through this, his moment of angsty vampirism and angsty kind of self-hatred of vampirism. And I've always thought at the beginning of it that, to some extent, either once the story concludes, once that narrative concluded, that Damien would take the high ground, or would take the not necessarily the high ground, but would take the moral standing of just putting himself to rest, seeing one final sunrise and that be it. But at the same time, the way that the narrative unfolded, the revelation of you know, having an unknown wife and child, the fact, even the inner conflict of knowing that once they die, their soul is damned to eternal suffering, so there's no peaceful rest for them after this, and they are still now be held responsible, or they have responsibilities over other people as well. So why would they not be selfish and decide that I want to stick around? I don't want to deal with that. At the very least, my thought process has shifted currently to the idea that while the family is around, he will be around. But I've also had this lingering thought of, but we are creatures of weakness. We are creatures of guided by emotions, and wouldn't there be this longing? Wouldn't there be this thought that maybe at some point there is gonna be a moment of weakness, moment of realization that maybe they don't want to step out of this, and realize that at the same time maybe don't want to be alone in this. So wouldn't they bring someone in the fold? Wouldn't they stick around for a while longer, either for some logic and some justification and some reasoning that they themselves craft to find a moral standing of it all, to kind of cover or not necessarily face the truth of, no, they are just selfish now. They just want to take the selfish route, and or they are terrified and not want to make that step by any means. Because we are, to an extent, Damien is still very human in his way of thinking, so that is still a big conflict and internal thing that, you know, sort of torments him. Because yeah, he could embrace its full nature and take on a different marker, but at the same time, he knows who he was before. He's still somewhat self-aware, even though to an extent he didn't know fully of himself, even in the past. But yeah, this created this weird inner conflict of him that I really liked, and I wanted to see in the future. So yeah, I've had moments where I thought that at the very least he would stick around for the family, but I don't know if there were ever other sessions, other chronicles, where, you know, there was moments in play where he got to a point where he no longer felt needed or responsible for others. He felt like he could leave people to handle things on their own, and he himself could step away entirely. Would he do that? And that's a decision that even to this day I cannot fully answer, because I feel like it really depends on how those events unfold by that point, and what exactly, and that specific unfolding, what exactly is going to lead him to. But anyways, on that aside, yeah, the whole shtick of nothing is set in stone, and you shouldn't think of everything to be set in stone when it comes to your character. And this also goes quite well into also the idea and the concept of never have everything figured out for your character. Just have the basic structure, the basic idea, the basic concepts, and go from there. Because you never know what may come up through the story that you'll really find interesting, or you'll find moments of inspiration where and realize that, hey, this is a good plot point, or a good conflict, or good or interesting side of this character that could be explored. But let me add it to it. I've never really detailed how they would behave or how they would interact in X scenario, so let me just take it from here and create that narrative now, and create that and add that detail now. So the same way for the game master, nothing is fully set in stone of how the story is built behind the scene, the same way it can also be said by your own character. You have the foundation, but that's it. The walls, the roof, the furniture inside, those are things that you can add as you are constructing the story while playing. Then, hustle to get ahead. After a couple of sessions, you might notice that the squad is barely staying afloat with the cost of quirks, repairs, recovery, and all the other places your hard-earned supply points go. The power structure of the factions in Beamsaber don't exist to improve the lives of the pilots. They are there so that the factions can continue to fight the war. If a pilot wants to get enough drive to change their circumstances, or a squad wants to get enough supply points to increase its tier, they are going to have to find alternate income sources. Scavenge, loot, steal, requisition, extort, and sell. If you rely on the end of the mission supply roll, you'll never get ahead. So, be clever. Hustle. Find, and again, this one of the aspects that I liked about Beamsaber compared to Lancer. You have a structure of play. You have a way of how the entire kind of like narrative circles around, but at the same time, it's not a hard set system or a hard set of kind of process or unfolding of the narrative. So the missions could be way more diverse, or the mission itself can evolve itself into something completely different. You can have big moments in between missions that have nothing to do with mech fighting, so you can have big roleplay moments and big ways of figuring out solutions or finding solutions to your problems that do not rely you to participate in a mission fully. And I'm suspecting that the Downtime Activities will offer you some methods of doing so, compared to, for example, Lancer, where most of the events, most of your actions, and most of the impact that you can create and you can make happens within the mission, happens while you are in combat and while you are fighting other mechs, and not necessarily interacting with a story, interacting with people, or having any sort of like social conflict or any other sort of challenge outside of the mechanical one in front of you. So that, I kind of like that's the aspect of Beamsaber, the flexibility of it all, and also the fact that all of it's built around the idea of telling the story and being very narrative forward, and not just it's not just about big mechs fighting and doing cool shit. I still like Lancer in what it's doing as when it comes to being a game focused around strategy, tactics, and general combat, while Beamsaber minimizes that and simplifies that into just situations, actions, and outcomes, and how those unfold through the result of a singular dice and some elements of cooperation, and that's it, with no bigger interplay of interacting or combining certain strategy of thinking too heavily on positioning, things like positioning, what equipment you have, how your abilities synergize with each other and with your gear, and so on. You still have those elements as well, but I don't think it's that heavy of a push for you to lean into that, or having a need to think that way while you're going through this story. Then, break the rules with long-term projects. While long-term projects improve quality of a weapon or help infiltrate an enemy squad, they can be used for literally anything. They could break the rules of the game, for example, by adding an extra level 3 harm box to a pilot, making it so that all of the vehicle load is uninstalled at the start of a mission for free, or by removing scars. Project can also completely change the direction of the campaign. A pilot could start a project to become the leader of their faction, or upload their consciousness into the vehicle, or drastically alter the setting, starting a new ice age by pushing the planet farther from the sun, or setting up a resonant electromagnetic field in the orbiting debris field to destroy all electronics. And who knows what else. Anything is possible. However, discuss the project's ultimate goal with other players and the game master. Drastic changes will require multiple 8-tick clocks. each one completing a step in the overall project. Remember that rule-breaking projects are an option but not an obligation. So if you like the game as it is, stick with it. But again, it also kind of plays into this idea. This is your game, this is your table. Play it the way you want. And this is kind of a way of saying we're even giving you a rule to just basically say, yeah, that mechanic, let's just make it different. Let's no longer think about it that heavily, or let's not make it so consequential anymore, and see where it leads us from there. Or just the general world building element of your current campaign and current narrative just being wildly shifted, and see, and improvise from there what exactly is gonna happen. It's fun because big results create memorable stories, or big outcomes and big changes create memorable stories as well. And so you'll always remember when you've just wildly, I don't know, fuck up the bell curve or fuck up the general logistics of some aspect of the game, and now the game has gone full on wacky in some concept or another, and now you're having and all of a sudden it's just a wild west of let's figure out where we go from here. And from that point onwards, I think everyone is gonna have a fight time. It's gonna keep and to at a very sweet degree have something to kind of look back on fondly later down the line once all of it has gone through. But that's also another thing. Create things that are memorable. Create experiences and memories through play. Not have fun in the moment, but it's even better if those fun moments stay with you even post playing that game session. And finally, I think, finally, act now and plan later. There's a tendency for players to overplan when they have the initiative to act, or I don't know, in some cases even the game master. They come up with a good simple plan and then start poking holes in it. These holes then need plans to patch them up, and those plans have holes, and so it continues. Flashback and undeclared load help to alleviate this over planning. So if you or other players start down the plan spiral, stop it, take action, and have flashbacks that declare an item when you need them to deal with an obstacle. This approach will keep up the momentum. Yeah, that's also like another thing that I liked about like the gearing system in here, that all of it comes into play as the mission unfolds. So you can always say that, oh yeah, I have the thing that is needed here for the mission. So you never feel like you've equipped your character with something that's never gonna come into play during the session or during the mission at all. So you always feel like you've made an impact, and you've had influence into the game itself to some extent or another, and you don't have to have this kind of worry of, oh, are we sure that we have to bring this? Let's make sure that maybe all of us can bring this together. Oh, now we have too many things that need to be brought and not enough people to bring all of these. So maybe we should figure out a plan of how to bring all of these things together, and then do this plan as well, and so on, literally into that kind of line of thought. And flashbacks also can help out with moments of, oh, something happened within the story that all of a sudden changed how the mission goes, or changed the outcome of the mission. Not change the outcome, but change the scene or general or general encounter, but in a way that you don't really have a method to deal with. Well, no problem. Flashback and have a quick mission, or like a quick set of actions that determine how exactly you are going to combat this, or of you kind of pre-planning for these eventualities, and depending on those dice outcomes during the flashback, how well are you going to be able to then counter these moments back into that moment of play where you've encountered them. You never feel like you're going to be completely under prepared. Which is good to know, which is good to have. And it offers flexibility, offers less worry, and just makes you, as mentioned there, just move the story along, go forward. do things, act, have fun, do crazy stuff, and we can deal with the inner details and the specifics as we encounter them, and we are gonna deal with them accordingly once that happens. Yeah, overall good principles in general of play, and I would even say that to an extent, of course, with some interpretations when it comes to like hustle, use your resources and all of these elements. Yes, you can reinterpret them with whatever game system you have in mind, but at the very least, but a good chunk of all these principles can be applicable to any game system. And you should be there to, you know, use action honorably. You should embrace your character's life and how exactly that's gonna outcome. You should be there to protect your players while you're telling a narrative. You should go into danger if that's the sort of system and game style that you are building. You should utilize the resources that the game offers to you. You should do anything possible to put yourself ahead beyond what just the game gives you as the bare minimum. And you should always lead and create the stories you want by example and by embracing and being part of that story and being part of that narrative yourself with your own character. And overall, you are there to have a fun experience, and that should be the focus, that should be the priority, and you should not necessarily look on all the other things. Are just small details that you can avoid or rethink or restructure in a way that best fits you and the rest of your group. But yeah, good principles, awesome things to cover. Now I'm gonna take a quick break because an ad is about to come up in a minute or so, and then we're gonna go to the next chapter, which is fiction first gaming. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, let's get back to it. So we got through the chapter of player principles, which I think was the lengthier out of the two that we skipped. Now we are looking at fiction first gaming, and you know, just have a quick look, because I do like the black and white kind of I'm missing the kind of sketches and it's a term, but there is a term, but for some fucking reason it escapes my brain right now. Line art, there we go. General, it's not completely, but it's general kind of like, you know, black and white sort of line art, which I do like the aesthetic of it. So for fiction first gaming, fiction first refers to the practice of letting the game's narrative determine which mechanics you use, rather than using the mechanics to decide what happens in the fiction. In many games, a player takes an action by saying, "I shoot the target," then you roll to shoot, and any description, such as "I peek around the corner and fire a quick shot," is an afterthought. The fiction takes a backseat to the mechanics, and the game could be played without any narration at all. So very akin to D&D or some of the other games out there, where you can easily just go through entire like combat scenarios, or even certain like puzzle and challenge scenarios, by just simply saying, you know, I roll investigation, I roll to attack, I cast X spell, I do X saving throw, and I'm done. And just say I succeed, I failed, and whatnot. And it's up to the players to make the players in the game master to add that embellishment as part of the describing the outcome or describing the action, which, you know, has caused something reasonable you know, degree and argument is this idea that certain players just don't necessarily engage with the roleplay and visualize aspects of this hobby of just playing a game and nothing else, and not necessarily engaging with a story and creating a character, or embodying a character or a narrative. So Beamsaber uses a fiction-first approach where the player describes what their pilot does, and the circumstances determine what mechanics you'll use. If a player wants to shoot a target, we must determine the surrounding situation. Here are some examples. So, if the shot is at a target range and the pilot is just practicing, that's probably the train downtime activity. There is no risk in taking the shot and no benefit from being exceptionally accurate. If you're part of a laser tag match with a friend, that's probably a cut loose downtime activity as well. There is no risk, and the purpose of doing it is to have fun. And a bullseye during a competition, that's probably a fortune roll. There's no risk, but a stronger performance will provide greater benefits. Part of the heated battle inside an apartment, that's probably an action roll using struggle. Bad things will happen if the shot misses, and the range is most suitably for the struggle action. Through a vehicle at a munitions factory with the goal of leveling the facility, that's probably an action roll using to destroy. Bad things will happen if the shot misses, and the scale of the destructive force involved means that destroy is best. Or at an unaware target a few feet away, that'll probably be an action using prowl. Bad things will happen if the shot misses, and the sneaky nature of the attack makes the prowl ideal. So it's all about how the scene and scenario and what you want to interact with, and in what way you want to interact with them or the object. Determine what sort of actions and what sort of role do. So even for the same type of action, you can do, as exemplified, you can do it in 6 ways, or you can roll in 6 different ways, or use 6 different types of rollings. So it's not necessarily as cookie cutter as or as obvious out. Oh yeah, I want to be an ace. As here, I want to be some gunslinger ace shooter, so I'm just gonna focus on X, Y, Z. Yeah, but there's gonna be scenarios where that's not really gonna matter, and that action and that investment of yours is not gonna be applicable. So think of your character as an actual individual, and not necessarily as someone who's out there to maximize the highest points or the highest score possible, or highest outcome possible. Highest favorable outcome possible, because in most cases you're probably not going you're not going to use it every time. There are any number of scenarios that this activity could occur in, and it's up to the players to consider the narrative circumstances that affect the mechanics. Picking the mechanic first and then applying the narrative can make the process messy. You'll likely find that establishing the fiction will streamline choosing the mechanics. If things do become confused, back out from the mechanics and talk with each other about what's happening in the story, and ask the following questions. What's happening? What is the player trying to accomplish, and what mechanics support that goal? Yeah. What's the current scene? What do you want to achieve? And what out of your repertoire of rules and options does that fit your needs? Remember that there may be a mechanic that is an obvious answer for accomplishing a goal. There's nothing wrong with choosing one for stylistic reasons. The mechanics exist to support the fiction. So yeah, at the same time, if you want to be out there to, for example, even in the prowl example, if the target is unaware but you don't necessarily care about the covert aspect, or the covert advantage, or the or the advantage of being undetected, then okay, go destroy, go do a different type of attack, go do a struggle if that's what you want, or if you feel like that's the narrative you want to tell, that your character is not subtle and they don't necessarily care, or they don't care about subtlety, so we just have the job done. No matter what, for them it's about the result, not necessarily how you reach that result. Then, when you're triggering the action to roll, let's look at how the fiction triggers the action and triggers this specific roll. Most of the game involves talking in character, describing actions, making plans, and all the fun that comes with playing games with friends. However, there will come a time for dice. Here are a few fictional situations that should trigger an action roll. A pilot attempts a dangerous activity with one potential repercussion, so if there is a bad outcome, that means that there should be a reason for you to do an action. A pilot leads or orders one or more NPCs to take a dangerous or challenging activity. Again, there's this the looming factor that there's going to be an unfavorable outcome out of it, or there is an element of risk to it. So you should you should make that into an action and not just let it at the whims. And a player is really excited to make a roll. If the player just wants to make a roll for the fun of it and kind of roll with the flow and just go with the narrative, like they're like okay taking on the possible consequences, even if maybe you could have easily interpreted that there would have been no consequences. That's what they want. Let them do it. At this point, an action roll triggers where the process has been explained before. So the roll determines if the action is a failure between 1 to 3, a success if it's a 6, or a bit of both, a 4, 5. In Beamsaber, action rolls determine the outcome of the pilot's actions and their opposition's actions. The game master doesn't roll to see how hard the opposition hits back. In these dramatic situations, the enemy and pilot are attempting to achieve their goals at the same time. So a 4 to 5 or 4 and 5 result means that the opposition finds some success alongside the pilot. A single action roll covers the back and forth exchange of blows, words, maneuvers, or whatever forms the conflict takes. So it, again, all of it is streamlined into telling the narrative through a singular roll and not having to go through all the particularities of, I do X thing, how does Y react? And they do A thing, so how do you react? And back and forth, which can add to the slog, can prolong the general scene. Some people could see the need of having so many rolls be unnecessary or be more of a bloat than just streamlining it into I do my action, they do their action, which can also be equally fine. All methods are okay. It just depends on what is your preferences. From my perspective, at the very least, you can have the granular aspect of it, but that leads more into a strategic form of play, and where tactics and synergy of mechanics are more important than necessarily the fiction and narrative they're telling. While here, you care more about the fiction and narrative, and those can happen from both sides simultaneously and in a kind of in harmony, in a way to kind of say it. Yeah, how do you choose an action? An action roll requires the player to pick the action their pilot uses to take on an obstacle or challenge. The fiction will always signal what action is appropriate. However, the player is always allowed to change their approach and the action they are using, so long as the new fiction fits the new action fits the fiction too. A player cannot choose an action that clearly does not fit the situation, such as using struggle to grapple with the words of an opponent during a debate. Yeah. Common sense can still apply and should still apply. There will be times where multiple actions are suitable to fit the fiction. The player chooses their actions, and the game master chooses the appropriate position and effect. If no actions seem appropriate, consider the intent of the activity. There are 6 ways you could approach using a hollow projector against some enemies as an example. So, the intended outcome: if you want to distract enemies so that allies can get a drop on them. Sway as a setup action roll. If you're looking to trick enemies into hitting each other with your own attacks, then you can use battle as an action roll. If you're trying to intimidate the enemies into retreat with a terrifying image, you can use command as an action roll. If you want to corral the enemies into a specific position on the battlefield, you can use manipulate as an action roll. If you want to get the enemies to let their guards down with the reassuring images, you can use consort as well. And finally, if you try to escape the enemies by making an illusory duplicate of yourself, you can use maneuver as an action roll. So you have, depending on what outcome you want out of it, then that will determine the possible action, or whatever seems close to it at the very least. The narrative and the Game Master assessment of the action determine position and effect. For example, for each example, we'll likely have different positions and effect depending on the circumstances. The players and the Game Master should discern together what is suitable for this in the game's tone. So at the same time, if you have different possibilities, you can put them out there, and also clarify that not all of them will offer the same position and effect, and that could also let the player to deciding which method they would prefer to do, if they want to be in a more of advantageous positions, or if they want to achieve a grander effect, or want to have the possibility of having a better effect, a better outcome out of it. So there's still an element of decision, there's still an element of cooperation and figuring out those details, and the player still has the agency of it all. Now, when it comes to the purpose of dangers and stress, the odds are stacked against the pilots, and they need resources like stress and resistance rolls to overcome them. Consequences are always on the table, and the power to change those odds is scored to the pilot's story. New players and Game Master might wonder how resisting consequences pushes the story forward, but harm and damage serve an important purpose, even when negated by resistance rolls. Describing how pilots and their vehicles are wounded builds tension. As the Game Master narrates a massive chainsaw tearing through the cockpit towards the pilot inside, the player gets scared. The stakes are raised, which builds an emotional investment in the story. Since they're so invested, they spend that stress. They say, "No, I hit the gas and dodge out of the chainsaw's path." They are required to describe how they reduce or negate the consequence severity, adding rich detail to the fiction in the process. And the player shows off their pilot's grit and resilience, which makes them feel powerful. That feeling of power gives them hope in the face of harsh challenges they must overcome, which means that at the same time they are willing to take greater risk in the future and play into the idea of, of taking high risk for high rewards. When the consequences, stress, and resistance rolls combine in play, it creates an exciting narrative. The Game Master describes the dangerous outcomes, and the players counter by detailing how their awesome pilots avoid the terrible fate. This back and forth conversation will create some of the most dramatic exchanges in the campaign. Yeah, putting players at peril so they can then start to think out of the box and figure out ways to use their resources to get themselves out of dodge is a good incentive. Of hey, think of your resources and put them into use more often than not, because you never know what you can create out of them. And the general narrative and general theme or embodiment of your character that you want to create out there is going to become way more complex and way more diverse. And finally, oh no, there's not finally, I just weird formatting. There's always a consequence. When the dice hit the table, the fiction changes. The pilots might change the world to suit them for a 6 result. They might experience something bad on a 1 to 3, or both on a 4 or 5. There should never be an outcome where the pilot results in nothing happening. Controlled consequences will be minor, but the result still drives the pilot into riskier situations, or makes them realize their plans were more perilous than expected. So there's always something to be cautious about, or something to deal with after the fact. There's no ever going to be just, oh yeah, you cruise through this, you're okay, unless, you know, it's just a part of the narrative that you want to tell, and not necessarily as part of the challenge. Because if there is no challenge, if there is no bad outcome, then you shouldn't really do a roll by any means. If the player can create some sort of consequence out of it, then sure, go with it. But otherwise, maybe justify of how, or talk about on how there is a possibility or not of a negative impact or some sort of pushback after the deeds is done. Setting precedents, the laws of reality need to be consistent between pilots and NPCs, or the fiction will break. So, if an NPC can shoot through a vehicle's cockpit with a pilot's rifle, then the scout should be able to attempt that shot as well. Likewise, if a player's pilot is the only person who can pilot their customized vehicle, the same is true with customized NPC vehicles. Every time new facts are introduced, they become opportunities for everyone. So, you know, no special snowflake situation on either side of the table. You're not there to combat each other. You're not there to one-up each other. You're there to tell a story and to have a fun experience together and not against each other. The precedents you set may need to change at some point in the game. Don't hesitate to make those changes, but remember that they apply for both pilots and NPCs. Sorry, I don't. Yawn. Oh yeah, quite eventually. Yeah, for a fiction first system, going on under the idea that, you know, the rules should go both ways is really important. That when it comes to telling a story, because otherwise it can feel like a plot hole. While in the context of a game that is more granular in mechanics, yes, mechanically on the game master side things might roll out differently than on the player side, either due to the fact of, you know, differentiating, you know, action economy, streamlining combat so the game master doesn't take too long because they have access to too many NPCs, or wanting to invoke that fear that they are facing a powerful foe, so they are utilizing rules and abilities that are not accessible to the players. Abstraction versus detail. A good story doesn't have to be described in exact detail. It's often more important to know if you'll reach your target in time, rather than knowing the exact distance. The exact price of the bribe isn't important, it's just that it costs 1 personnel. Players probably won't possess the same expertise and skills as their pilots, but we don't expect them to do the math behind an engineering role. Though a level of abstraction is fine for players who aren't comfortable with describing the detail of their actions. So it's fine if some players want to keep it a bit more vague, but at the very least the intent and purpose and outcome is clearly defined. Just make sure that you bring out the details when setting an action's position and effect. If you're bribing a guard, do they have a gun to your head? Sorry, Leon hit me again. An arm's length away, or is it still in their holster? The detail will impact your pilot's circumstances and potential consequences. Yeah, only what's relevant to the narrative, but nothing, but not more beyond that. Because from that point onwards, you can go with whatever fits best. But that overall covers, from the looks of it, the fiction first gaming. Which, again, it's the other kind of principle and philosophy of this being a narrative forward and sort of game where you're here to tell a story first and foremost, not necessarily here to, you know, be the highest roller that ever rolled, or just being out there to outpace and outsucceed and outdo everyone that you can ever do with your amazing cool dice and stats. You're there for a fun and interesting narrative where you're dealing with challenges, facing impossible odds, and succeeding despite them, and creating odd, quirky, and fun stories where everyone at the table can equally participate in and have a say in. But yeah, that covered the general rules of engagement, rules of play, rules, general player or play philosophy. I would like to call it of Beamsaber, which well defined, well described, and some of it, again, for games that are more role-playing forward, should be applicable when it comes to fiction for this gaming. And even with the player's principles, a lot of them, I would even say that they are widely applicable to any sort of game. So I think they are useful advice. Of course, where certain mechanics or where some of the principles went into more specific mechanics, you could probably extrapolate or reinterpret them to these systems and concepts or mechanics specific to the system that you want to apply them to. But overall, useful information to have, and it's important to set up the precedent and set up what exactly is expected for you to do out of this game, and what exactly does this game strive, in which points does it strive, and where this game does succeeds and does well. Because if you understand its strong suits, you lean into them, and if you're leaning into the advantages of a system, then more often than not, you're going to have a time compared to the other way around. So, with that being said, we can now look at a final chapter for today, which is the Downtime Activities. Now, we'll have to see how in-depth we're going to go with them. These are the activities that happen in between missions, either to set up mission or for other needs or other activities that your pilot might want to do that don't necessarily have anything to do with the missions themselves, but they're just the general narrative that you want your players to tell. We might, because it does go into a few descriptive elements, if I remember correctly. But yeah, because you have all types of downtime activities. We'll see how in depth we're gonna go through them. I'm just saying this because, you know, I've had to wake up a bit early today. I'm a bit on the EP side, and depending on how exactly these activities are detailed, we might look into them a bit more heavily. We might just skim through them and just look at the wider aspect of how downtime activities work, and keep it a bit shorter for today. So yeah, I'm gonna go through it, see where that leads us, and go from there. So, downtime activities. Between missions, pilots have downtime phases where they can pursue personal projects, recover from previous mission, prepare for the next, and engage in free play. Each pilot has 3 downtime activities they can use towards training, projects, healing, and preparing for the next mission, and so on. The downtime activities are listed below. Pilots can also engage in free play, where they just talk to each other and other NPCs. Sometimes these scenes can adjust for color, but you need to make an action roll or a fortune roll if there are some risks at or stakes. I don't know why my brain just associated at. Anyway, if a pilot or cohort assists with a downtime activity, with exception being cut loose, describe how they help, and they will take a +1 die to the roll. Helping costs no stress and no downtime activities for the pilot or cohort existing, but only one pilot or cohort can assist at a time, so you can't group up as a unit. Allies in the direct superior do not provide a 1 dice when helping with downtime activities, but will likely provide access to resources that would be otherwise unavailable. So different sort of benefits. A pilot can spend 1 supply point to take an additional downtime activity if they're willing to spend those resources. They may need to spend a supply point per additional activity as indicated in the following table. So you can spend material points if you want to do the following downtime activities: acquire assets, which is temporary use of an asset, be it item, cohort, or service; to enhance, work towards gaining a new quirk or vehicle action point. To fix, use technical skill to repair a vehicle. Manufacture, basically, so you turn a design into a function object. To salvage, they deconstruct the vehicle for extra supply points. And to upkeep, do routine maintenance with material to refresh quirks. If you're using personnel points, the following downtime activities can be spent on: collect, pressure the locals to provide your squad with supply points, cut loose, spend time with a pilot to relieve stress and learn about them. Long-term projects, work towards learning or creating something. To recover, coalesce or get treated by a doctor. To schmooze, do something small to make a faction trust you more. And to train, work towards gaining a new action point. And for our story blurb to kind of exemplify this, I think it's really been messing with me. Not having a consistent schedule, I mean. Sometimes we're gone on a long mission for ages. Sometimes we don't get called in for a while. I don't know when I'm going to be fighting for my life or when I'm going to sit in the bar doing nothing for 3 weeks. Every moment in the battle feels like a lifetime, and every break somehow feels like forever and no time at all. I've been trying to rest up as much as I can when we do get some time off. But even after short missions, I'm exhausted. And when we're gone for a week or more, I can't move the first day we're back. And that's if I didn't get hurt. Harrow comes in and checks on me, brings me snacks or whatever. Yes, he knows what it's like, but I wonder how he always goes right back to normal after coming home. After a couple of days of lying in bed, I go check on Bert, usually. Sometimes I think around a little, try to replace something that's rusted out. After that, I finally feel like I can be around people again. So, I get chicken nuggets in town, and that's kind of it these days. God, writing it out really makes it seem even worse. I don't do anything anymore. Everything I do when I'm not on a mission is getting ready for the next mission or recovering from the last one. Fuck. From the Journal of Keiko Pitchfork, Tuesday. Yeah, a quick way of kind of also how to not embellish, how to personify the struggles and perceptions and problems that your character is dealing with through their downtime activities as well. And now we're going through the actual downtime activities themselves, and from the looks of it, they're just listed in quick descriptions and how exactly you can gain them. They're not too lengthy, so for 1 page each, honestly, sure, let's go through them. Let's see what sort of downtime activities you can do. So, acquire assets. Gain a temporary use of an asset, one special item or a set of common items, enough for a squad of your tier scale, a cohort, specialist or fire team, a vehicle, a service, transport from logistics team, use of warehouse for temporary storage, legal representation, and so on. Or temporary use is a period of time. No, not or, sorry. Temporary, when referring to temporary use, that means that there is a period of time that is reasonable for the asset, usually the duration of the next mission. An asset may also be put on standby for future use, so you might get the fire team to guard your FOB, your base of operations, and they'll either stay until the first serious battle concludes or stay for a week until they are reassigned. So it's up to you to decide. It's up to the circumstances to figure that out. To acquire asset rolls, the squad tier's results indicates the asset's quality. So, using the squad tier as the base. So, for 1 to 3, it's a tier -1. 4 or 5 is in just a normal tier. It's just a standard tier. Or 6 is a tier +1. And critical success is a tier +2. To raise the result of this roll, you can spend 1 material per tier level, or raise it beyond critical success by spending 2 material per additional level added. The game master might set a minimum quality level required to get a particular asset. For example, if you want to an intact AWV and the credentials, you'd need to acquire a tier 4 asset. Anything else isn't enough. If you reacquire an asset, you get a +1 dice to roll. If you continue to get the same asset over and over again, you can essentially rent it forever. Chemical poisons, and dangerous gadgets are going to raise some eyebrows. When you acquire one of these items, rather than making it yourself, take a -2 trust with your proper patron faction. If you want to permanently add an asset to the squad, you can either get it as a squad upgrade or make owning it a long-term project. Acquiring an asset during downtime is generally used for the pilot's or squad's goals, separate from the needs of a mission. This may include getting a doctor, renting out a restaurant to impress someone, and getting transport vehicles for an unsupervised trip, and so on. The asset acquired may be useful for an upcoming mission, but an asset may also be acquired as a flashback during a mission. You can spend 1 material for an additional dice to the acquired asset roll, or to increase the result by 1 level. If you want to take advantage of a region's resources, you can take a number of bonus die equal to the region's might, if acquiring a cohort, if that is for acquiring a cohort, or tech, if acquiring a pilot or vehicle gear. However, you lose trust equal to the number of bonus dice rolled with the faction that controls that region. Because in a way, you're like forcibly taking it. So, for example, Eclipse wants some vehicle scale flashbangs for the next mission, so they decide to acquire that asset. The game master says flashbangs that big will require a result of tier 2. So Eclipse will need to get a 6, as a 6 provides gear equal to their squad's tier +1, as they are a tier 1 squad. They roll 1 dice because the Cerotaphs is tier 1, and it could increase the number of dice rolled by spending materials and or by buying the region's back channels. And they decide to do both, so they spend 1 material point for +1 dice, and they use Fulleton's tech rating of 2 for +2 dice, but at the cost of a -4 trust with their patron. So in total they roll 4 dice, 1 for the squad tier, 1 for the material spend, and 2 for the region tech rating. And then they get a 6 as their highest result. Exactly what they need for the flashbangs. So it's all of it has to do with using your resources your available resources to your advantage, and weigh in the pros and cons, and if you feel like it's worth taking the dip in trust and reputation and so on to have a higher chance of achieving the result that you want. So that is nice. That overall reflects to the acquiring asset, which it's interesting to have, and I do like that it's not just necessarily for a mission. You can reinterpret it as also being something that is a tool or a means for you to achieve between missions, for either some elements of free play or trying to achieve a goal that is away from the mission, or maybe it's some long-term goal that might build up to a future mission but not something immediate. Now, as the next possible downtime activity, you have collect. You choose a region to collect from and roll dice equal to its wealth rating. Gain an amount of supply points equal to the highest die rolled, or 9 supplier points on a critical success. However, those supplies are meant for you, so if any dice comes up as 1, gain the supply points and immediately roll an entanglement determined by your relationship with the faction that controls that region. If a faction does not control the region, use your status with the squad that has the strongest presence in the region After the first collect during downtime, each subsequent collect takes a cumulative -1 die, as likely targets take cautions, and that can also reach to 0. So once that has happened, you're going to get to a point where you cannot acquire anything else from within that region, so you'll need to find a new region for you to collect supplies. The supplies gained can be supplemented by trading supply points at a rate of 1 personnel spent to gain 1 material, or vice versa, representing forcibly setting market prices on locals. You can also spend 1 personnel to take an extra collect activity. So you can do that twice and gain more. So Owl decides that the squad needs more supply points, so he collects from Journey City since it has a wealth of 3. They roll 3 dice equal to its wealth rating, get a 4, a 3, and a 1. So the Cenotaph gets 4 supply points, the highest die result, but must now also roll on the entanglement table because a 1 was rolled. Since no faction controls Journey City, the table selected is based on the squad that has the strongest presence in the area, the Tower Defenders. The Cenotaph have 0 status with them, so the Game Master rolls on table C using 3 dice, minus the 3 dice minus the Cenotaph's relationship with their patron, and being 0, that's still 3, and the entanglement is resolved as normal. So yeah, even collecting and taking supplies might be risky, because in a way you're kind of imposing your own will and own force, and you know, every action has its own consequences, and how that kind of plays into it. Then cut loose. Pilots cut loose to remove stress from their stress track. They pick another pilot and describe how the two of you spent the time dealing with the pressure. You roll dice equal to the number of ticks in your connection clock with the pilot joining you. So, you know, heal stress is equal to the highest die result, and you add another tick to the connection clock and a new belief about that pilot. So this is a way for you to actually, you know, progress, to deepen your relationship with a character, collaborate into some sort of a fun roleplay, you know, improv activity that the two of you can do together, and learn new things about each other's characters in the process. So if you're the type of player who, type of individual who likes to know more about other people's characters outside of your own, you're not just out there just trying to tell your own character story, this is a really fun way and good way to kind of encourage that. The accompanying pilot does not increase their connection clock, nor do they add dice to the cut loose roll for participating. If the connection clock fills, ask the target pilot for a truth about one belief you have about them. Then you reset the clock to 1 tick as you see them in a new light. You both take 1 XP, which can either go into the pilot's attribute or playbook XP, as it's a general one. When you cut loose and heal more stress than you have, you overindulge. When you overindulge, you behave poorly and made choices you will likely regret. Choose one way you overindulge from the following. You attract trouble. Roll an additional entanglement using the table and dice from the end of the previous mission. You brag. Take a -2 trust with your patron. You go AWOL. Your pilot vanishes for a few weeks. Play a different pilot until this one returns from their vacation, in quotation marks. When your pilot returns, they also healed all their harm. Huh? Or impropriety. Make an ass out of yourself in front of the pilot that joined you. Reset your connection clock with them to 0. If your connection is already at 0, take the level 1 harm alone. Oh, buddy, I love that. It's low-key funny. I do like you just make your ass. You're like, okay, I'm out. Just made your relationship worse. Now, whether you overindulge or not, you can decide to cut loose and let your pilot skip to the next mission. If you do, play a different squad member for that mission. This might be a new squaddy, a friend, or an already familiar NPC. Cohorts cannot be the accompanying pilot. Cohorts or other pilots can be present in the scene, so long as they are not the focus. But they do not provide additional dice. You can also spend 1 personnel for an additional +1 dice to the cut loose roll, or to increase the result by 1. You can always spend 1 personnel to have an extra cut loose activity as well. If you have scars and you don't take the cut loose as an activity, you suffer 1 stress per scar. So there's gonna become a point where you'll have to relax. Otherwise, the piling up trauma that you've collected across the missions is gonna take a hold, which is a bit grim, but really true. Helenia decides to cut loose with the demon so she can remove some stress. He wants to see if his tactical genius works in her favorite strategy game and challenges him to a friendly match. She has 2 ticks in her connection clock with him, so she rolls 2 dice. The highest result is a 5, clearing that much stress. She then adds another tick to her connection clock with demon and writes a new belief about him. If she had a 4 or less stress, she would have overindulged. If the added tick filled the connection clock, she would ask demon a question about one of her beliefs about him, which he must answer truthfully. And at the end of it all, they both get 1 XP. So the thing is that no matter what is the outcome, no matter if you overindulge, no matter if you're out of play, no matter if you progress positively or not with your other part, with your chosen player, your chosen pilot in the activity, both of you still acquire an XP. And it's also like a fun way to kind of, also be like, hey, let's do something together. You get a benefit out of this, I get a benefit out of this, even mechanically. In a way, you can also create this kind of element of camaraderie where you can, pilots can cycle around each other and swap around and go, and have moments with each of them, and figure out what exactly would be common points and what exactly would there be elements that they would have in common and they would appreciate of each other. Because at the end of the day, yes, they might have a different perspective, different ideals, and they might not see each other on the same level every time or most of the time, but there has to be some element, something about each other that at the very least keeps you together. Because at the end of the day, you're there for collaborative storytelling, so you clearly made characters that would be willing to be around each other to some extent or another, and to collaborate and help each other out. So the cut loose activity can allow you to also kind of create those moments or create those reasonings together and kind of collaborate. Fun. Oh, we have a 2-for in 1 page, so let's quickly go through that. Enhance. When you spend time improving your vehicle, add 1 mark to the vehicle enhance track. If you have the testing facility squad upgrade, you mark 2 instead. When the track fails, add a new quirk to your vehicle or add a point to a vehicle action. You can also spend material points to take an extra enhance activity. And as an example, Scarecrow wants to improve her claymore, so she's going to enhance it. She spends time running simulations on its limits to add 1 mark to its enhanced track, which fills it. After clearing the enhanced track, she can choose either to gain a new quirk or 1 vehicle action point. She takes the new quirk over strained speed and can now push it beyond its stated speed. That's complete. Fine. Not much to add here. Is purely just a downtime to add advancement to your character. And fix, kind of in a similar way. When you use technological expertise and materials to fix a vehicle, you or a squad mate roll engineering, or have a friendly NPC roll their quality. If it costs you stress to repair a vehicle, unless you have the workshop squad upgrade. The damaged vehicle removes any level 1 damage and marks segments on its men clock according to the result. From 1 to 3, it's 1 segment. 4 to 5, it's 2. 6 is 3. Critical success with 5 segments. When the men clock fills, reduce each detail of damage the vehicle has by 1 level. Then clear the clock. Any remaining segments roll over the now empty clock. Note that the pilot whose vehicle is being repaired spends the downtime activity, not the repairer. You could spend 1 downtime activity to have a squad roll engineering fix. To fix your vehicle, your damaged vehicle. Whenever the vehicle suffers any new damage, clear all ticks on its men clock. You can also spend 1 material to add an additional dice to the fix roll or increase the result by 1 level. And you can also spend the material to take an additional fix activity. Unlucky needs to repair his strafe after the most recent mission. It has 2 levels of damage, torn wing and busted hand. And 1 level 3 damage, ripped open. The cenotaph has a workshop to help with repairs. If it didn't, he'd have to spend 2 stress to fix it. He could roll the engineering fix himself. Ask Dredge to use for better engineering to do it, or he could ask an appropriate cohort to roll their quality. Dredge is happy to help and roll score 3 dice engineering. 4 highest results is a critical success. So, Unlucky adds 5 ticks to his vehicle's men clock. This fills the 4 tick men clock, which lowers the level 2 damages to level 1, and the level 3 damages to level 2. And 1 remaining tick rolls over to after the men clock empties. Torn wing and busted hand become level 1 damages to crooked wing and stiff hand, while ripped open becomes stuttering systems at level 2. If Unlucky chooses to fix his strafe again, both level 1 damages will automatically clear, and he'll add 1 more tick to his men clock. So yeah, again, quite straightforward. Mostly just an activity to basically do to put yourself back together. Not necessarily akin to Cut Loose, where it also has a lot more elements of roleplay. Here is just really for the aspects of the mechanical. But yeah, I'm gonna take a quick break here as an ad has just come up, and I will return after the ad break. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, there we go. We still have I think we're halfway there after we are passing the long-term project, which I think we're gonna quickly cover. There's not much to add on these on my own, and to be fair, and from the looks of it, all of them go really fast, and some just happen from one page to another, so that's completely fine. So long-term project. When you work on a project, whether it's new or partially completed, describe how your pilot advances the project and roll an appropriate action. Mark segments of the project clock according to your result. From 1 to 3, it's 1 segment. 4 or 5, it's 2. And 6 is 3 segments. On a critical, you complete 5. A long-term project can cover any kind of endeavor that takes a great deal of time. Researching a new beam weapon, finding a missing person, building a romance, finding a personal sponsor, and even possibilities that break the rules. The Game Master determines how many segments the project clock has based on the goal. A big project may require multiple smaller projects to complete. You might need to complete a preliminary project to get the right tools, skills, or resources before starting the main project. For example, you might want to make deals with a group of guerrillas, but you don't have any way to contact them. Your preliminary project could be building a rapport with civilians who live in the guerrillas area to build trust before asking them for a contact. You can spend 1 personal point to add an additional dice to the long-term project roll, or increase the result by 1 level. You can also spend 1 personal to take an additional long-term project activity. I'm not saying extra long term because that could be misunderstood. As an example, Dredge wants to clear the broken bank of corrupted apps by rehabilitating them. So Ko starts to a long-term project. The game master says Dredge will need to first create some infrastructure before Ko begins clearing the district. Dredge agrees to complete an 8-tick project clock that sets up a clinic for the region. Dredge decides the first task is finding a good site for the clinic in the rundown bank. Ko rolls two dice study to look over some reconnaissance map of the area. The result is a 6, which adds 3 ticks to the project. So Ko also spends 1 personnel to bump the result to a critical success. So you can also even add your own critical if you are not achieving that. So it will provide 5 instead of the 3. After completing this clock, the clinic is built and Dredge can start rehabilitating the district apps. So, yeah, a good example of it. Then there's also the manufacture activity, which is related to the crafting system, which is going to be detailed from the looks of it, I think, in the game master section. And but alternatively, you can use a long-term project of an appropriate size if you want to simplify the process. So manufacture does not necessarily have to. You don't necessarily have to jump into a crafting system if you don't want to. You can just create it as a project. And we'll look into crafting as part of the game master section then, when that's going to be covered. So not much else to add there. And with long-term projects, we've discussed here before of how they can also break the rules, and they're a way for you to add some different elements of play and some different activities that go beyond just prepping for the missions, doing the missions. You can do something that's a bit more personal, something that's a bit more connected to your character, to your squad, or just goals that could be adjacent or detached from what you are doing as a squad within the war. So it doesn't feel like you're also rigid within this style of play. You have flexibility to doing other things. Then we have the recover activity, which lets you seek treatment to heal your pilot's harm. But pilots need to get medical care from a medic, veterinarian, autodoc, or someone else with a good amount of anatomical knowledge. If you're a human that needs to go to a vet that has the only option as a vet for healing, I mean, it's still medicine, and I feel like maybe some principles apply, but I don't know. I do not know to what extent. So I'm not sure if it's like the best idea, but I guess beggars can be choosers in some scenarios. If no squad mate or allies can feel that need, an acquired asset can get you temporary access to the professional or equipment you require. May permanently recruit a healer by completing a suitable long-term project or mission, or spending the squad upgrades and to get a specialist cohort with the medicine expertise. So, recovery is a long-term project. Your healer rolls engineering for squad mates with the doctor ability, or quality level in case of an NPC. The patient removes any level 1 harm and then marks a segment on their healing clock. 1 to 3 is 1 segment, 4 or 5 is 2, 6 is 3, and as usual critical is 5. When each healing clock fills up, the patient reduces the instance of harm by 1 level, then clears the clock. All remaining segments roll over to the new empty clock. If you want to let the harm recover on its own, take 1 stress and roll no dice. Roll 0 dice, that means you take the lowest out of the 2 dice rolls. If you attempt to heal yourself, you have the doctor and have the doctor ability. You can take 2 stress after roll. You can also spend 1 percentile point to add an additional dice or to increase the result by 1 level. And additionally, with that percentile point, you can also additionally with another expending of a percentile point, you can make an additional recovery activity. And once again, only the pilot receiving the care spends the downtime activity. On recover, the healer doesn't use up any activities. When you suffer new harm, remove any ticks from your healing clock, so you go back to 0. And as an example, Flagstone needs to heal. After the most recent mission, he has 2 levels, 2 level 2 harm, stabbed arm and broken foot, and 1 level 3 harm, pierced lung. Yikes. They could rest and recover naturally, spending 1 stress and rolling 0 dice. Ask Dredge to use core doctor and engineering actions, or have an appropriate cohort lower their quality. Dredge is happy to help and rolls scored 3 dice engineering. Core's highest result is a critical success. So Flagstone adds 5 to their healing sorry, their pilot's healing clock, which fills the 4 tick, and lowering 2 level 1s to a level 2 and the level 3 to a level 2. The remaining 1 tick then rolls over after the healing clock empties. Stabbed arm and broken foot now become level 1 harm, bandage arm and delicate foot, and the pierce lung becomes a grinding cough at a level 2. If Flagstone chooses to recover again, all level 1 harm automatically clear, and she adds more ticks to their healing clock. Yeah, that's kind of similar to what we've covered before with the with the vehicle repair, so nothing else to cover there. And then we have a rapid fire of the last 4 activities, if I'm not mistaken. So, salvage. You take apart the damaged vehicle from its for its valuables. Roll engineering, gain supply points according to the result. 1 to 3, 1 supply. 4 or 5, 2. 6 to 3. 6, it's 3 supply points, sorry. And a critical success is 5. If the vehicle is intact, consider a mission or long-term project to sell it instead of salvaging it. Salvage destroys a vehicle regardless of how many supply points are pulled from the machine. You can also spend 1 material to take an additional extra salvage activity, but from a different vehicle. Tower managed to steal an enemy AWV during the last mission. They could try to arrange a buyer, but they don't want to deal with the associated headaches, so they instead decided to just start ripping out for the valuables. They have 0 points in engineering, so they decide to roll the 2 dice and take the lower result. And they get a 4 and a 6, so they take the 4 and receive 2 supply points out of it. Yep, simple, easy, a good way. Basically, this is your additional way of obtaining supply points. One of the other ways of you obtaining supply points beyond just from the mission reward, especially if you are deciding to go independent, is probably going to be a must to figure out to use this to the best to your advantage, and look for opportunities to always salvage. Then you have schmooze. Say what your pilot does to improve the relationships with the factions, and you make a fortune roll using the appropriate action. You increase trust according to the result. 1 to 3 for it's 1, trust 2 4 or 5 is 2, 6 offers 3, and critical offers 5. Additionally, you can spend a personal point, add a dice to the roll, or increase the result by 1 level. You can also spend 1 personnel to make an additional schmooze activity. Demon wants to ease tensions with the democratic federate system, so he meets with a Pars Piani of the Dark Room to discuss the layout of Fort Yovanol. He looks over the intel she shares about it and adds more information based on his time in the fortress. He rolls his 2 dice of study and gets 5, adding 2 trust to the Cenotaph's relationship with the DFS. Again, another way to obtain points. A lot of these downtime activities can also help you out to achieve those lasting points to reach a next tier. For example, to increase your relationship status by getting that last few points of trust to reach that tier point. Similarly, there when it comes to doing certain actions and to train to get those few last ticks to get that that advancement in whatever attribute and ability you have, and so on. So these activities also encourage you to kind of clear out your progress and fulfill it and advancing forwards. And speaking of training, When you spend time to bettering yourself, you mark 1 attribute XP or 1 playbook XP. If you have the right squad training upgrade, mark 2 XP instead. You can only train each XP track once per downtime. You can also spend 1 personal point to take an extra train activity. So that means that you cannot, even if you take 2 train activities, you cannot stockpile it on the same track, on the same attribute. It has to be, or playbook, it has to be on something different. Pitchfork wants to improve her engineering and insight actions, so she spends a day reading technical manuals about her agrarian and sends Dredge to the occasional question. This effort gives her 1 XP in her insight XP track, which is enough to fill it. She clears the track and adds 1 point to any of the insight actions. Engineering. And the final downtime activity, upkeep. Clear exhausted quirk boxes on vehicles. Spend at least 1 material and roll that many dice. Your vehicle refreshes a number of quirks equal to the highest result. If the result is higher than the number of quirk boxes filled, the remainder is wasted. So you may spend 1 material point per quirk to remove an additional exhausted quirk after the roll, or you can spend 1 material to take an additional upkeep activity. For example, Scarecrow still has 3 exhausted quirks, and after the free upkeep, so she decides to do some more upkeep on her claymore. She has to roll 2 dice, so she wants to roll 2 dice, so she spends 2 material. The highest die is a 4, so the free quirks are refreshed at the exact, and the extra is wasted. So you don't get any benefits, but at the least you clear your quirks. This one is basically just you kind of gambling your odds. So you spend a number of material as you think you would achieve to clear out your quirks. Of course, the more material you spend, the higher the chances are. Or you can just go with the odds, just spend a low amount of material, roll a low amount of dice, and see how much you clear out of your quirks. And then, if you want to, you can do so again and spend by spending even more material. At least I think this way it can be a bit of a risk reward in the sense of you can do this. At least you can attempt a low risk effort only twice, and it's still technically, probably if you were to do the number crunches, on average it's probably gonna cost you the same way if you were to spend multiple materials on a singular activity, a singular upkeep activity, most likely. So you don't have to worry that much about it. But overall, that clears the general activities. And as a final example to see how a downtime scene is usually unfolds, Sasha, the Dredge's player, wants to improve Dredge's ability to fight when outside of the core AWV. So Sasha uses 1 downtime activity to train prowess. Jess, the Scarecrow player, says that she wants a conversation between Dredge and Scarecrow about the previous mission, and asks Sasha if Scarecrow can be present during the training. Sasha gives the go-ahead, so Dredge and the Scarecrow chat in character as they spend time at the firing range. Sasha marks 1 XP for Dredge's prowess training. The Game Master asks if Scarecrow is also training prowess, but just says Scarecrow would need a much greater challenge to improve her skill with guns. Sasha suggests that since Scarecrow is reprimanding Dredge for core incompetence as a combatant, maybe Scarecrow cuts loose that way. Jess loves the idea, so wraps her cut loose into this scene too, as she gets this off her chest. So in her case, this is more of a leisurely activity, not necessarily. And when the conversation comes to a head, Jess rolls dice equal to the number of ticks in her connection clock with Dredge. She currently has 2 ticks on the clock, so she rolls 2 dice. and gets a 4. Scarecrow had 5 stress and is left with 1. Jess decides that Scarecrow doesn't explode at Dredge, and Sasha thinks that Dredge takes the criticism well. So Ko is at the shooting range after all. It's now time for someone else to have a downtime activity. So it even shows how a scene can unfold where 2 players can cooperate and collaborate in a way where 2 separate activities can merge into the same scene and have a character moment together, which can also add to their own connection and their own progression in their relationship and getting more out of the characters and even more XP. And we've even seen here an example how that turns out, and that covers the downtimes, which, as I mentioned, great way to add diversity and to kind of lean out and have options outside of the box and outside of the general structure that you probably would feel stuck in within the cycle of mission, prepping for the mission, doing a mission, back whatever happens in the mission, post-mission effects or post-mission outcomes, then prepping again, doing the mission and post-mission outcomes. This adds a bit of a refresher and something else that it can equally be prepping for the next mission, but at the same time can be your own personal goals, your own personal projects, and or even to create your own personal moments with other players or NPCs that you want to emphasize within that session or as part of your character's journey and storyline or narrative, and add a lot more nuance or more depth and a lot more diversity to the play experience, which I do like a lot. And overall, I like how simplistic it is. It's not too overly complex. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to wrap your head around it. So greatly appreciate that. But yeah, that covers all that I wanted to do today, which is fine. As I said, I was kind of expecting that today is not going to be the longest of streams. It is completely fine. At the least, we ran in a runtime that I'm usually comfortable with, so that's fine. And to be fair, I don't think I wanted to push further than this because my voice for some reason has decided to be a bit fucky right now towards the end of it. I still have a bit of a remnants from my cold and my sickness, and this for me specifically hit my voice. So I still have moments where I kind of my voice gets a bit gruff, gets a bit stuffy, and I have a hard time keeping up or being or have a hard time speaking in general. So I don't think I want to push myself to it. And plus, as I said, I had some obligations that suddenly appeared today that required me to wake up a bit early than my usual scheduling, and that meant a less amount of sleep. So I don't want to push that anymore. So I'll most likely end it here. Alright, it was a lot it was fun overall, and I do like reading through this book. Anyhow, now all that's left is the Game Master section. From what I said, how I said it, because it's quite lengthy, I will separate it into 2 sections. I'll figure out exactly to what extent. I'll probably I say here how to prepare a campaign, probably up until that point ends, and then the inner details from creating a faction to situations and how to end a campaign could be the other. Again, I'll have to look into it and see and go from there how exactly I'm gonna split the Game Master section, or maybe we're gonna look at specific chapters that follow a general theme, and then for example, anything that is prep wise, we can look at that first for general principles. This session 0 Game Master tips, then we can have like a general campaign setup, and then we can have the inner depths elements of determining the effect, app development, crafting situation, which could probably be, depending, might even split it into 3. I'll have to look into it and see how exactly I can structure it. Oh yeah, that covers it for today. I'm not gonna keep you all any longer, just because I do not know how long my voice to this level of upkeep is gonna be available. It's gonna be capable for of me to do. So to not prolong it any longer, I will be looking at some place for us to go and say hi to, as there must be some fun people out there doing maybe something RPG adjacent, or just fun games that could be worth showing or jumping at. Let's see. Oh, I think I have an idea. I don't think we've been at her place in a while, so I think that sounds like fun. See, then I'm not gonna be a dumbass and go. Oh no, it's just barely started. I don't think they're just gonna dip so fast, so we can't do that. Be prep for that. Let me do it here first. Then let's do it here. Raid channel. And start raid. So we are jumping at Asina's place. She's currently playing Peak with a few other friendos out there, so why not say hi to her and all the awesome people. She's been a wonderful person. She's been on an art and creative journey for quite a while now, and I'm really impressed by her progress and impressed by her ambition and general determination. I've loved seeing from the sidelines her journey, and to some extent she even has had her own impact around here. All of the sub emotes that you see here, or majority of the sub emotes available, are made by her. So yeah, if you're interested in getting some cool stuff from her, she has a VGen. I think she's been officially verified as well, so cool stuff to get from her. And she's been on this kind of growth and rise for a while now, and I'm really excited to see her advance forward. So yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun overall. But anyhow, that's gonna be it for me for today. I'll see you all tomorrow with a chill Slay the Spire indie stream for us to trying to achieve to actually complete a Spire run as a goal. And yeah, just general chill fun time. So thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing. Don't forget that. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye.